we're doing introductions. So since we have a new person joining us, Maya, who
today.
Oh, you're not hearing you, Sophie. It's like your mic is still not hearing you. Do you think it could be your microphone, or do you have a built-in mic sometimes? Or you can go through the the gearbox up there and select your input. Sometimes you can see what use a different mic, or still not hearing you. See your mouth moving. Okay, restart your computer. Okay. When in doubt, reboot.
I'll continue.
Okay.
My name's Tim. I'm in the forest behind Santa Cruz. I trained in graphic design in London, but have been kind of over the years. Well, even when I was studying graphics, I was actually always interested in product design as well, and always been interested in making things and figuring out how things work. But yeah, I've worked in lots of different areas in the music industry. I lived in Australia for 10 years, and then I've been working in technology and design in the Silicon Valley area for about 12 years now, and I'm interested in the two things, in the empathy, just in growing my awareness and personal knowledge of empathic listening and talking, but also in helping to look at ways to help the process of design in general. So yeah, I'm particularly interested in the sort of the fascination around HCD and design thinking, but with a view to helping people actually improve it rather than just rely on just the process. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and so what we're doing here is we had there's the IDEO 10-week design, 7-week design course. We have this team that we're going through the course. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, Maya, at the end. So we had gone to the research step, and then we kind of felt that we needed to step back a little bit for this meeting to have more of an open-ended sort of a discovery phase, kind of sort of stepping back a little bit, because that's something that Tim had recommended. So he was going to lead more of a open discussion about, I don't know, how would you describe what we want to do, Tim?
Well, what we talked about was that really to end up with something useful as a result of going through the HCD process, you really need to have like a challenge or a problem defined up front, so that we can actually all work towards something, and kind of importantly feel that we're contributing to something meaningful, as opposed to it being too too undefined up front. It actually helps to kind of create something when we're kind of clear about what it is that we think we as a team think we can make a difference with. So one thing that I talked a little bit about in the previous meetings was because I'm and Maya's a designer as well. It's a sort of interesting thing to look at as a process from a designer's perspective, because this is just kind of how we, well, HCD and design thinking tries to introduce certain aspects of how designers approach problem solving, but there are also some aspects of it that I noticed that are kind of missing in terms of the front end of how things are set up at the beginning. And what I found as a designer is that it really helps to gain some common sort of understanding around goals before you start getting into a project, because almost always, well, in all team design events, people are from different backgrounds and we all have different opinions and interests and things to contribute. So it actually really helps just to kind of frame or even reframe the problem before you actually get into working on the process, just so there's at least some kind of clarity around it. And
so here's the document. I just put this link. That was the document from last. I just put in the chat window. So if you open that up, you can see some of the discussion we had. And also, if I want to do a quick intro, Sophie, it sounds like your audio is working.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, I'm Sophie. Nice to meet you, Maya.
Nice to meet you too.
So I live in Berkeley, California, very close to Edwin, actually. And I currently work for another online education company called Coursera. And I'm very passionate about online learning. And also, I'm new to HCD, but I'm very interested in this. And also, I got very attracted to the topic of empathy, because that's also something that I've been thinking a lot about. So I'm very excited about this, how we can use HCD to do something around empathy. Yeah, that's about me.
Okay, were you able to hear some of Maya's introduction? Did you hear some of?
Yeah.
Or did you get?
I heard. I think the last part.
Yeah, I'm an industrial design student. I go to California College of the Arts, and I'm doing some research for my senior thesis project, which is centered around care. And I'm really interested in looking into how we take care of our emotional well-being and the current methods that are being used in therapy and peer support groups and other ways of sort of handling emotional struggle. So, and I came across the Building a Culture of Empathy that Edwin has set up, and I thought that it was extremely interesting that he's starting this movement, and I just wanted to learn how this can be utilized and designed to help us sort of increase these opportunities for empathetic relationships, and how that could contribute to our emotional well-being. So that's why I'm here.
And you're in Berkeley too, right? You live in Berkeley, or?
Yeah, I live in Berkeley.
Okay, so there's three of us all nearby here.
Wow.
So how do we approach this, Tim? Do you want to just lead the discussion, or we'd already gone through kind of the explanation of it. This was more of a just Sophie, we were kind of stepping back from more of this discovery phase, because Tim felt that we didn't really go into really hearing everybody, where everybody is, and to just have kind of a shared dialogue about what we're thinking about empathy, I guess, and what we're wanting to accomplish, and we're kind of in the research phase anyway. So this was like a bit of a research approach too. So yeah, Tim, what do we do?
Well, I was going to suggest that because I'm not sure that you guys didn't hear any of the discussion from last week. Were you there, Sophie? I can't remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
No, I wasn't.
Right. That's right. It was just me and Edwin and Mercedes and Lulu. I mean, what we talked about was the stuff that's in the document that Edwin's posted in the chat window on page 2. There's just a screen grab of what we talked about, which was getting these three components before, or me talking about how I approach any design process, and it was basically that there are 3 components. There's getting context around what the subject is that we're working on. There's getting an understanding or talking about the goals and the scope for the project, like what is it that we're trying to do, and taking the results of those in a design situation. Those findings are summarized and put into a brief. So what we talked about was that type of information is what's kind of missing from the beginning of the HCD process at the moment. There isn't much to kind of go on in terms of having individual input and a kind of common understanding of what it is that we're trying to do. So an example might be that here are two what I would say are completely different challenges. The first one, how do we increase and make the world a more empathic place, as opposed to the second one, which might be how do we improve the empathy circle listening tool. One is a big. The first one is a big, a blue sky, a social kind of challenge, and the second one is a specific challenge to like a product or a piece of software, essentially, in terms of how or how we interact with the way that the circle works. So those are two like huge things in their own right. And what I'm saying is that the discovery process really is about us coming to some understanding that we want to work on one or the other, or we want to work on a certain aspect of one or the other. Otherwise, what I found happens is people get lost, and there's lots of kind of there are a lot of cycles and spinning goes on because people are not able to kind of latch on to the specifics of what it is that we want to achieve by the end of the going through the design process. What goals do we think we want to achieve as a team, and how do we think we might be able to measure the success of kind of doing that? So what we talked about last week was just how it was really more me helping the other guys understand the value of this contextual and goal definition at the beginning of the design phase, and why that's important to me, and super important in a commercial context, because you know, people are paying, and there's time and there's money and resources, and it's not we don't have the academic kind of freedom to just sort of go. We just need to kind of get some focus on what it is that we're doing. So I contributed this as a means of helping everyone else understand how it is that I go into defining this stuff up front. And there's I went through and talked about a bunch of specific kind of tools that I use to help in there. But I think the main thing, I guess the big thing, really, in terms of how I see this helping, is in helping each of us feel that we're clear about how we're contributing, and that we're actually doing something, hopefully that's going to make a difference or be meaningful, instead of just, you know, a whole bunch of random ideas that may be some good ones and maybe some not so good ones, but that they get kind of put away in the drawer and never seen again. And that's definitely a danger in my experience with brainstorming, and the danger of the process becoming more about the process than what kind of comes out of it. The process, any process, is just a tool, right, to achieve something. You know, and the tool isn't necessarily going to make the end result any better. If you're a photographer, buying like an awesome, you know, next year's camera isn't going to make you any better photographer. You know, a great photographer could take a better photograph than a crappy photographer with a cardboard box with a hole, you know, a pinhole in it. So what I'm saying is that the tools themselves are actually, in my opinion, are only a really sort of small part of the whole thing, and that the more important thing than the tool themselves is just getting clear on what problem is it that we're trying to solve. So I think that was the I hope that explains where I was kind of coming at from where I'm from.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what I'm hearing is we want to just hear from everybody where everyone is around this project, and just, you know, share your ideas, and we just kind of play off of each other, and just kind of then it. Last time we had, it seemed to work pretty well. Everyone was sharing. We kind of started getting a sense of shared understanding and meaning kind of emerged. So I could start by saying that for me, I started with the design. I've done this course now like 5 times. Now this is like 3 groups, so it's going to be like 8 after these groups. And we started with that question of how do we make the world a more empathic place? And it was just huge and overwhelming, and it got very theoretical, and it was just like unending. You know, it seemed like you could never end. It just discussions just got so, you know, kind of theoretical kind of, and it was so. And I kind of ran into that a couple of times, and it felt like we didn't get things done. So this time around, I was looking at creating starting with an actual prototype instead of just the challenge. So the challenge is how do we create a more empathic world, but we start with the prototype of the empathy circle and then constantly redesign the empathy circle to as a kind of a more narrower scope So that was kind of trying to address that problem of the overwhelm, and especially we only have a limited amount of time of 10 weeks. So it just seemed to kind of narrow the scope and make it more productive. So that's kind of where I was coming from.
Mm. Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I think that my kind of sense is that how do we make the world a more empathic place really that's a great one to tackle as a project. But in order to do it, you need to think about what the end result of going through the 10-week process might be with something like that, that would be sort of doable. And there might be some really, there would be some really great outcomes come from that if it's sort of managed and done in the right way. It might just be a 10-week kind of blitz on people throwing in every week a bunch of new ideas into different kind of buckets, maybe from societal empathy issues all the way through to individual ones, and what you end up with is a room full of post-it note kind of ideas that fit into a bunch of categories. But alternatively, with what Edwin was saying in terms of the tool and the empathy circle itself, that's another one, and the one that I think probably a really good one to kind of focus on is the actual tool itself, and the way that we're working right now in the Google Hangout. It could be the project itself could just be limited to this experience that we're having now, and are just coming up with a bunch of ways that we think we can improve it. So, but I think the important thing is to hear everyone's opinions about the breadth of those different things, and then collectively for us to kind of have an agreement and come up with quite a specific definition of what the challenge is. So if it is about improving the empathy circle, then we actually define that, and that's what we use as our in our brief, and we can get an understanding of what we want to achieve by doing it. That's my thoughts on it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I totally understand where Tim is coming from, and I think it makes sense to have a clear scope and a realistic scope and goal of what we're trying to do. So I kind of agree as well that how to foster an empathic way of being, it's a very big statement, and to do that it may require actually a lot more work. So comparing to that, redesigning just one tool definitely seems more realistic, and I think that makes sense. And if we're going with redesigning this tool, I'd be happy to work on this with you guys.
Yeah, as an industrial designer, I totally understand Tim's point of view, and I think it's good to have something to focus on rather than sort of this big nebulous goal, because in industrial design process, it's very much about prototyping, getting feedback from users, and then that's sort of the best way to learn, by putting out solutions and ideas that are specific, and then learning from those. So that's sort of a really good way to learn fast. And so I agree. I think even if it is a little bit more specific to the tools, it's still addressing that larger issue of how can we foster empathic behavior. So I would agree with what all of you guys are saying.
With the IDEO course, the way they structured is they give 3 design challenges kind of off the shelf that we could have chosen from. So you've got, there's 2 routes you can do within the course. One is they give you 3 predefined challenges, and they're kind of eliminating the discovery phase, just saying here's the challenge, you know, work on this. And then the other direction is you can create your own design challenge. And it's almost, if you see the time scales, it's almost like 3 times the amount of work they say to, you know, do that. So that's why we added 3 extra weeks, you know, to the 7 weeks of the course, was because we're doing our own design challenge and we need more time to kind of do that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that the important thing really is getting that definition around what it is that we think we might want to do. So I'm just thinking off the top of my head. There are many different aspects to the the design of the empathy circle tool itself. So, for example, if we decide that that's indeed what the challenge is, or what we want to address by working on the project, there are a whole bunch of different aspects to it. There's issues around the technology. There's the whole user experience element of us interacting with it on a technology kind of level. There's the content and the structure of the circle and the behavioral stuff kind of behind it. You know, how we do we think things are working just in terms of the way that the listening reflection stuff works, all kinds of things. In fact, I was just amazed yesterday. I had a chat with a friend of mine in Australia on FaceTime with my phone, and something that I was thinking that was so interesting about that was that the difference between having a high definition image with the camera and the fact that Edwin and I have talked about this before, but really subtle things like the eye contact and the combination that I was really noticing yesterday when I was talking to my friend was it was huge, the difference in terms of the feeling kind of connected, because there was something happening with the eye contact and the HD camera, the fact that it was a clear and uninterrupted picture kind of made the connection feel more. I wasn't being distracted by the kind of the technology so much. So it was actually helping it was helping me feel more connected. So anyway, I thought that you know, that for me as an example is something that I think is kind of really interesting, just in terms of, you know, is the Google Hangouts as a format at the moment. I would say there are a whole bunch of things that we could kind of just talk about what works and what doesn't work, and even little kind of things like moving the, you know, do we start off by getting the window up as close to our camera as possible so that we're looking at each other. And does that make a difference for other people or not? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But those are things that for me I think are interesting and probably sort of doable ways of looking at actually improving the way that the circles work, just even by little things like that. So yeah, so for me, I think I could imagine that being a good way of going about the challenge, saying in terms of the empathy, the tool itself and the format, the way that it's working at the moment within the Google Hangouts, how do we improve that? That's a challenge that I would say would be a good one.
Just writing these down. Feel free to write in the Google Doc. So the one thing that came up for me is a friend of mine visited just this morning. He had the time wrong. We're supposed to meet this afternoon. He thought it was just before this meeting, and we had actually done the first. I did the first IDEO course with him. We met at the Oakland Hub, and he was just sharing. I mean, in that group, it got very we had that broad question, and it got very theoretical. We ended up doing a lot of exploration, about the nature of empathy and so forth. And it was hard to get down to a concrete project. But he was saying that for him, I mean, after having done that, the piece that he got the most out of was the personal experience, of the empathic listening. He's been estranged from his father, and his mother and father got a divorce, and so he was not even on talking terms with his father. But then he got together with his father recently, and he started using some of the empathic listening process with him, even in himself, in terms of reflecting back what he's hearing his father say, even not verbally, but just a little bit verbally and a little bit just internally. And he said that made a huge difference, giving him more space to be present with his father. And if he hadn't have done that, he probably would have gotten triggered, and it would have ended the conversation. So that one little piece he found to be the most useful of everything that we did in that group. And he actually came up with the design challenges, how might we transform our personal relationships through empathic listening. So that's another thing that resonates with me, is the empathy circle is really the core piece, I think, is that reflective empathic listening part. So something about exploring that core piece is interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because another thing that we talked about last week was about helping people, introduce people to the idea of the empathy circle, and helping them get an understanding of the different ways that they might be able to get good stuff out of it. Mm-hmm. So that's a really great story, and a great example of maybe something that's maybe it's a user case scenario or something that becomes one of the demos at the beginning that people can see and read about, or watch someone talking about how this actually gave them something to use outside, in their other outside in the world other than in the circle itself. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, so it's about creating stories around that. If we share a story around empathic listening, that might be supportive for people who are doing an empathy circle. Is what I was hearing there. It's like a solution.
Yeah. I mean, it could be it could be like, you know, how do we come up with a toolkit to help people do this outside of the circle that we're in, that we're doing now. So if I wanted to go do one of these with my, say, with my family, who are all in, you know, different spots, what do I need to do? Not just in terms of the tool, the way that the tool or the current format of it works, but what might be the best way to help me understand the process of empathic listening? Should it be something that's structured or not? Or, you know, are there any kind of guidelines that we can help people take their understanding of how this works and then go do it themselves? So yeah, I think that's a really great challenge.
I think one thing that came up to me is I think if we take a step back, empathy circle, it's more about listening. So I guess the meaning of the empathy circle is to help people to listen and to become a good listener. I guess that's the way I see it. If we want to put it into context, because I was looking at Tim's design process. So the first is, I guess, the background. Like, what is empathy circle, or like, why do we need it? I guess if we want to give this project a meaning, it's help people become better listeners, if that could be one. So that could be the context when we introduce this empathy circle to people. Why do you want to try it? Because being a good listener is very important, and it has a lot of benefits, like personal relationships or like professional work setting and all that stuff. And then we can introduce them to this tool. And I guess our redesigning process can also be around like how to foster better listening, like based on what we have, like what can we do more to help people become better listeners.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because for approaching a project like this as a designer from the outside, the first thing would be around defining, you know, what is the purpose of the empathy circle, and in what you talked about just now, Sophie, the idea of it being about listening and about being heard. That's one perspective, but there could be a discussion around is that really what we're going to focus on, or are there other aspects to it, like not just practicing listening backwards and forwards, but having a sense of genuinely being kind of felt. Is that something that comes into it or not? I don't have the answer, but I'm saying that what you just described is why it's so important to do this type of work at the beginning, because you're actually we're kind of trying to frame, you know, what is this that we're working with, not just diving straight into making a solution for something that we've not actually defined up front. So I think that's a really, really good point, because to me there's a huge difference between my sensation of someone just kind of parroting back what they just heard me say, versus me feeling that there's that they've absorbed it, and that they're having some kind of deeper connection and understanding about a shared feeling about what's being talked about, rather than a pure reflection. And I don't know whether that's I I don't know that might be out of the bounds of what it is that we're talking about. But the point is just to explore those the boundaries really.
Yeah, to go off of what you were saying, I agree. I think that everybody has sort of a different perception of what empathy might be, and that can take probably a lot of different forms, whether that's just listening, having someone to listen to or talk to, or more on a sort of a different type of look. Like, because I think, Ed, when you talked about how you guys would mirror actions, and that was a method of sort of showing empathy, and just exploring all the types of methods that that could be considered empathy, and I guess defining really what we think it is. It's pretty important to think about.
Yeah. I noticed. I noticed something really big. I'm in an NVC group. I don't know if you guys know about nonviolent communication. The practice of it is in the group setting where you get to speak and then have people reflect back what they heard, but the reflection goes, it's more than just an affirmation that they're repeating what they heard you just say. It's about it's a reflection of the feeling aspect of it. So it was interesting to me to kind of compare the two, because what we've been doing so far in Edwin's circle is focus on listening to what the other person is saying, and then to kind of précis or to repeat back a condensed version of what it was that they were saying, without an opportunity to reflect on the feelings or the deeper kind of stuff that's going on there. So that's just an example that I thought was kind of interesting, that would be brought up in a discussion like this, in terms of, you know, framing what is it that we're doing. Are we just trying to kind of, are we just going to limit it to the you talk and I repeat back what I heard you say, or is it necessary to kind of change that in order for it to go slightly deeper into the more NVC world or not? So yeah.
Well, one thing I would add to that is there's like different processes within the empathy world. So this basic reflection that we do in the empathy circle, that was really explored by Carl Rogers in a therapeutic world. He would, someone would come to him, and all he would do is kind of be with them and accompany them on their journey, kind of reflect back periodically his understanding. So it's not parroting per se. It's like saying, what is my understanding of where you are is this, and he would share that. And for an hour, he would stay present with the person on their journey. So that was kind of this basic process that's almost like ubiquitous now in the therapeutic world. I mean, it's like all the therapists are kind of trained in that. Is almost like a basic foundational basic step. And then Carl Rogers, he had a bunch of grad students, and one of the grad students was Marshall Rosenberg, who started this NVC. And what he did is he found that in the empathic listening, in the, you know, you reflect back or share your understanding, that you can make a guess of what the person is feeling, and behind every feeling is like a need. So if a person is very angry, like, oh, I'm really pissed off with you, that person behind that feeling is a need, and the need could be something like, you know, they need fairness. They're angry because they're finding an unfair situation, and so they're very angry, and they have that feeling of anger. And so with NVC, you learn how to make a guess of what the feeling is as well as what the need is. You share that with the person, and even if you're not right, it still gives the person who's speaking something to kind of jump off from. It's kind of like a jumping off place, like, oh, that's not, I'm not angry, I'm just a little irritated, right? Because you didn't quite get how they're feeling. And then they actually kind of correct you what they're feeling, but it's actually helpful for them in terms of exploring their own experience. And that takes a lot of training to do that. I mean, it's not like something like, oh, everybody's gonna be guessing each other's feelings and needs. It's very time consuming and to train that. So an empathy circle, just the reflection of understanding, anybody can do it. I've done it with my family who know nothing about all these processes, and they can kind of get it, pretty quickly. So that's one aspect. The other is there's another grad student of Carl Rogers was Gene Gendlin, and his insight was the people who had the greatest shift in the therapeutic world. It's like you're having trouble, anxiety, depression, whatever. You go to the therapist, and the therapist is sitting there listening to you. And who are the people who have the greatest healing or change in themselves? And his insight is the people who spoke from a felt experience, that they're not speaking from their concept. They're speaking like, oh, I'm feeling kind of excited. I'm feeling a little agitated. I'm feeling hopeful. It's like they're speaking from a felt bodily sensation, and they keep speaking from this sensation, and then the therapist would reflect back what it is that they're hearing, and that they were the ones that would kind of uncover kind of a new way of being, a new energy, which would kind of get into their more, conscious awareness. It's more this unconsciousness. So that would really lead to growth, and a whole school, just like NVC, there's this whole huge school of practitioners doing NVC. There's this whole huge school of practitioners doing focusing, which is the Gene Gendlin approach, which is focus on your felt experience and get reflection from that. So all those processes come back to this one basic first step, which is the reflection, or not reflection, but the shared understanding of what you're hearing the person say. And it's very accessible. There's whole mediation processes that are based on this too. Just with that basic step, you can do really wonders in the whole mediation field of conflict mediation. So that's a little bit of a context of the kind of the nuances of kind of what's going on here. But those other processes need a lot of training. That's the thing. Is like you can't just say, well, let's do a circle and I'll start guessing each other's feelings. I mean, you can't start with people who know nothing about this. You got to have, significant amount of training, whereas the empathy circle takes very minimal training, almost none.
So that's really awesome background information, because that helps us to that helps us to put kind of put some definition and stakes in the ground in terms of the scope. Because by just by you explaining what you did is kind of super helpful, because that way we can all get an understanding of that. Yeah, there are all these other different techniques and methods that come off of the basic the basic reflection empathy circle method, but that they're maybe too complex for us to kind of dive into or consider with this. But it puts the empathy circle idea, it gives it context, and it allows us to then have a shared understanding of that complexity, and then go, okay, now we can choose to just really kind of focus on like one particular aspect of it. So if we want to stay just on the speaking and listening reflection stuff, we know why. we got a better understanding of that fundamental, that base level information, that here's why we want to limit it to this. We know it can kind of go into these other areas potentially later on, but for now there's maybe we do limit it to the speak reflection in its current form, but understanding that, then we can start looking at, well, how do we improve that but stay within those bounds, if that makes sense. Good, it's good context stuff, and so I think that what Edwin just spoke about for me is the kind of crucial stuff that helps give me an understanding of what the overall kind of project and subject matter might be kind of dealing with, and having it explained and talked about to me, I would kind of take those couple of minutes of him speaking and just chop them out and say, oh, well, there's most of the kind of ideas in terms of just the introduction to what this is and what we're going to do. So anyway, that's my reflection on that. Thank you, Edwin.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tim. This is actually very crucial background information. I think that's actually, so I think today's session is really good because we have like a better understanding of what we're doing, and then we have a lot more background information around why Empathy Circle is what it is today. It's because Edwin has like processed all this information and then synthesized it and then proposed like a feasible solution for people with no previous background. So that's actually very important information. I think that also I think limit the scope of our project. So if we want to design for people who don't have a lot of experience before, so what would be the first step for them? Then it's probably empathic listening. And well, if we like think really far into the future, maybe this can be a series of different workshops or activities that we probably can take time to develop if people have interest. But then what we're designing now is, I guess, the first step of this entire process of helping people be more empathetic, I guess, if we want to put it into like a system. So what we're designing is like the first step.
Yeah, I would. I think you're totally right, Sophie. What came up for me when you were talking just now about that was that it might be that we the challenge is how do we introduce people most effectively to this in a way that they understand why they're here and why they're taking part. That it might be as simple as that. There are a whole bunch of kind of great things that we could do, even if they're just little simple things that could make a really big difference to that. For example, just Edwin's kind of summary of the background that he spoke about just now. That those types of things might be things that we think are useful to present people at the beginning, like the intro video, stuff like that. But I think you're right in terms of how we introduce people to what this is and why they should care and what they might get out of it is a really really important thing. And also something we spoke about last week was doing that in a way that helps people that might have real kind of difficulties, or they might be kind of skeptical about it. I think that that's an important thing to kind of consider as well. You know, how do we make it accessible and user friendly and help people just really get like what's going on here, rather than make them work or feel put off by it because it's, you know, it's technology based or it's too hard to understand conceptually. Those are probably ways that we could kind of look at things that help bring people into it and feel kind of comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty energetic around that beginning part of it. So.
Yeah, I mean the whole project for me could just revolve around a landing page. You know, how do we create a landing page that explains what this is and why people should take part in it? That could be, for me, could be kind of huge, because we want people to just understand that the quicker and more effectively we communicate the whole purpose behind this, and help people take that and are able to kind of relate within themselves and their own ways that they might be able to take it and it be useful for them, would be a good thing. That guy that you spoke about, you know, with his family, and examples of that, those ways that it might be used, could be really helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be good for people to have something to focus on that they can personally relate to. So if there were sort of, like you said, like a page where it explains things basically in like all sorts of opportunities or situations that it could relate to, that maybe they could then pick themselves that they wanted to focus on, whether it's personal relationships or anything like that. And then that's a lot more of a tangible way of latching onto something and then trying to understand this through their personal situation. So I think giving it their context to their lives would really help in engaging people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and that could take the form of maybe before the empathy circles, before you join or do a group circle, maybe there's a one-to-one thing that you do with someone else that's done it before, where you practice. That's just an idea for ways that we could kind of change it or come up with ways to help people get accustomed to the way that it works. You know, an actual a live one-to-one explanation of someone else's experience with it may or may not be, you know, a helpful thing. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those I think that helping people understand how it relates to them on a personal level that's a really good one, I think.
Yeah. Also, the thing you were saying about leveraging that to help them practice with each other, I think, is a really good point. During my research for my thesis, I visited some peer support groups, and I noticed that a lot of the participants were actually training to become facilitators, and that really helped them sort of understand and learn the material to a lot deeper level and motivated them to sort of really understand it and practice it. So I think practicing and having the opportunity to teach others is a good motivator in disciplining oneself, I guess, or staying committed.
yeah, the practice aspect of it is something that I found really kind of interesting and sort of helpful, because it's like I found I don't feel as anxious about taking part in it now as I did when we first kind of started, and that's something that could be, you know, thought about or considered in the way that it works as a whole, is that you're introduced maybe to it in a way that's kind of tiered, and maybe the first way, or for the first few sessions, you do specifically with the goal of it is just to kind of practice it without worrying about what the subject matter is, or maybe the subjects that you're speaking about are kind of guided. But anyway, yeah, really interesting stuff. Edwin, are you okay with what we're doing, the way that it's going? Talking of which.
Yeah, I'm kind of writing this down. There's a thing that's come up for me is that dynamic facilitation process. Within the dynamic facilitation, it's like a version of the empathic listening. It's like taking the empathic listening into a group context where there's a facilitator who's experienced in empathic listening, and we're now as a group, we're kind of exploring this theme, and that they actually model the empathic listening with each person. So if I was the facilitator, I would have empathically reflected my understanding of what each of you has said in terms of, you know, your ideas. For example, Tim, I was hearing that you feel more at ease now, having practiced empathic listening after a little bit now, and that you're imagining there could be like a tiered steps of learning the empathy process, and maybe you begin with someone who's just models it with you, maybe on a one-to-one basis, and then there's other different tiered steps into the process, and that would put you more at ease, or put new users more at ease.
Mm.
So, I mean, is that kind of what I'm hearing, for example?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the introduction to it, I think, is really important, because it's something that it isn't kind of familiar to any of us, really.
Mm-hmm.
or it's familiar to a few of us, but if the idea is to take this to a broader market, then to me, a really important thing to think about now in the context discovery stage is to think about what the challenges are for new people that are new to it, or people that are unfamiliar to the process. You know, we talked when you were talking last week about we were talking about some of the challenges that people have, and that it could potentially be really sort of frustrating to some people, that like, oh, I don't get this, I don't understand it, and I'm going to start beating myself up for not being an empathic, or being able to kind of listen properly.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely something that's a threat that I can see to the overall idea. So that's an interesting place to start in terms of, you know, how do people kind of feel about this, and where where might we come up with ideas for ways that that diffuse those uncertainties, or those especially challenges where it almost kind of backfires. It's unempathic.
So what I'm hearing there is that you're seeing that new people coming into this process might have various problems and challenges and kind of pain points, and you've kind of defined the how might we statement, and how might we make new users have a better experience coming into. I mean, you kind of said it. I don't know if I'm quite getting it, but we had the problem, and your solution is to, I guess your how might we statement is to find solutions to make people have more sense of ease who are new to the process.
Yeah, and that exactly. Well done with your dynamic facilitation.
Now, here's the other part of the dynamic facilitation. I'm still, a bit rough at this. The process divides the discussion into different categories. So we have the problem heading. So the problem that you were saying is that people are having pain who are new to the problem. I mean, who are new to the empathic listening, or having kind of pain and struggle with it. You translated that into a how might we statement, and then there's also the solutions. You actually come up with this series of possible solutions. So with the dynamic facilitation process, it creates these headings that we just had, and then each of the comments you make gets translated into a full sentence, like it gets written out into a sentence, and it gets put into one of these categories, and then it's like the whole discussion kind of just forms in a dynamic way, and then at the end you just kind of like clean it all up, and you've almost got your design brief right there. And plus, the thing about it is it's modeling empathic listening too, because everyone who speaks is being reflected, so you're also getting that empathic listening process modeled as well. So the facilitator is well versed in empathic listening and is listening to each of the participants so that they feel heard. And then, so anyway, I guess I'm kind of seeing that as almost like another step within the larger empathic, pie, I guess.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, it like I said earlier, it falls into the design process, or the way that we work. It's just a different way of kind of framing really what we've got here in this context exploration, and the goals and the scope. It's basically just trying to create some bounds and get people's input, and get people feeling that they're
heard. They're heard and seen, and basically everybody. So is there anybody who doesn't feel heard yet? We want to hear from. Make sure everybody feels 100% fully heard. And maybe I can practice the empathic listening in the dynamic facilitation process too. So maybe.
I feel kind of, I guess I kind of feel heard. All I'm doing is participate in the process by hopefully helping add some points of view on how to get clarity around the process of designing something. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what it is. All of the stuff that I work on requires this process up front of saying, well, what are we trying to do?
Yeah, so you're trying to get like a sense of clarity in terms of the upfront part of the design process, is kind of what I'm hearing there. And that's actually what I'm looking for too, is how do we have clarity? So I guess I'm seeing that maybe dynamic facilitation as a tool might help with clarity creation.
Yeah, yeah. But if you're stating that that's the goal of the dynamic facilitation, then yes, it can work. So, I guess the way I would frame something like that is we've got this thing called empathic listening, and we want to take it to the world and do something with it. But the first thing we want to do is create some understanding around the background of it and where the challenges and opportunities might kind of lie. And we're going to use the dynamic facilitation process.
So the other part that kind of resonates with me is like in terms of that every voice is heard, like now you and I have done a bunch of talking. I mean, this is the last few minutes. So I start feeling a sense of anxiety about fairness. I wonder, like Sophie and Maya, you know, do they feel heard? Have they had a chance to express themselves? So for me, that's the other part of like the relationship is a sense of fairness and inclusion of everyone. So kind of finding ways and tools to, you know, foster that inclusion.
I think I feel heard today, and we have a lot of really good input. So I think we're definitely heading towards a good direction of finding clarity and shared understanding, so we can start working on this project. So we now have, I think we have a better shared or better like common ground right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable.
Okay, so I'm hearing that you feel pretty comfortable and you feel that there's a sense of clarity being developed around our design challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
I definitely feel heard as well. I think I'm just I'm spending a lot of time trying to think and catch up with a lot of stuff that you guys have been processing for a couple weeks now. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what you guys have been discussing and understand it as much as possible. But it seems like, I mean, everybody is trying to understand what we're talking about, and it seems to be going in a little more clarified direction. So, yeah, I think I definitely feel heard.
okay, so I'm here.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of feeling heard in this discussion here, and that you're just trying to kind of wrap your head around it, kind of understand what it is that we're talking about in the past couple of weeks, and you're feeling that there's a sense of direction towards clarity?
Yeah, I think it's starting to become a little clearer. I think there might still be some questions around what exactly you want to do, I think, but from my perspective, it seems like that. But I don't know what you guys think.
Oh, okay. So what I'm hearing there is you're feeling that there is a movement towards clarity and maybe getting that clearer design challenge
Yeah.
down, but it's not quite there, but it's moving towards that direction.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Is there more around that, or?
Well, that's how I feel at the moment.
Okay, so I felt pretty good. Like it. Oh, Sophie, looks like you're.
Yeah, I just have quickly have one thing to add. I think so far from what we discussed, it looks like we kind of are forming two like design challenges right now. One is like what Tim is proposing, like how might we develop a landing page for new people, which is like how do we introduce empathy circle to people who have no experience. And the previous one, we have been talking about the challenges. How do we redesign the tool of Empathy Circle? It sounds to me that how do we introduce people to Empathy Circle? It's like a smaller part of redesigning the bigger Empathy Circle tool. So it looks like we have two challenges right now. One is like a fraction of another. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if like people have other challenges that they are thinking about, but these are the two that I've been hearing.
Okay, so
so
I'm
far.
hearing there, you're saying that we have two challenges so far, and one is how do we just create a landing page for the Empathy Circle work, and the other one is how do we redesign the Empathy Circle, and that the landing page is like a sub project of the redesign. And you're just kind of like wondering how everybody else feels around that.
Yeah, I wonder if
that's clarity.
yeah, if everyone is kind of on the same page with what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, I know for me it's there was also the landing page was part of like what are people's pain points in terms of entering an Empathy Circle from scratch. They don't know anything about empathy or empathy circles. You know, the landing page is really to introduce them, you know, being beginners, totally beginners, to make a really positive, pain-free experience. Just kind of where I was.
I agree with all of you. I think that I guess when I mentioned the landing page idea, that was that was maybe an example of an end solution that you could get to the bigger kind of question of how do we introduce people to this overall as a subject. So yeah, I mean I can see those being two options that are standing out to me at the moment. The option of the introduction, how might we introduce people to this whole idea, to the Empathy Circle, and the other one is, as Sophie just said, the tool itself. You know, how do we improve the tool? But I think my kind of sense is that the introduction to it is almost, well, it is the more important kind of thing, because by getting a sense of that introduction and being able to communicate it well, almost definitely will surface ideas about ways that we can actually improve the tool itself. For example, you know, it might be that we think that we want to try to sort of minimize the technology aspect of it for people, and that might be, for example, we might take that idea from the introduction of the introducing the sorry, my tongue's twisted. I'm trying to explain it properly. We might come up with ideas for the tool that are influenced by our findings from the introduction. So step one, go into the Chrome view and set your browser to presentation mode. Something like that. Something like that may be a little thing that could kind of really change the way that it works. I'm actually going to try it now. Oh yeah, it's done it. So
So what I'm hearing there, Tim, is that by developing a landing page, we're introducing people to the process, and this is doing that would actually be a way of, would be important to improving the tool itself. The empathy circle is a tool, so starting with that will actually kind of cover the improving the tool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that works for me too.
I'm totally off subject, but well, it's not off subject. But I went into which mode is it? I'm using Chrome at the moment, and I just went into presentation mode where it fills the whole screen. So Edwin now is big, and I'm like I'm more able to kind of focus on what's going on with you guys than the rest of the stuff that was on my desktop. I was sweating about how much stuff there was there. Anyway, you know.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you had a problem, which is a lot of distractions in terms of relating in the empathy group here, and that by setting, the solution was to set the screen to presentation mode, and that's like eliminated a lot of distractions. So a kind of a pain point is distractions.
Right.
And there's a possible solution there already.
Yeah, exactly. But that the idea of simplicity and trying to kind of minimize any hassles that people have with it, you know, might be a point of view that we came from by looking at the introduction. And I'm not saying even that it necessarily needs to be a landing page. It might be you know, a video introduction from you, or a reading list, or some, you know, an introductory activity. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying that the way that it's set up is going to influence how the tool works, and it would be good to kind of, from my perspective as a designer, that's how I would kind of approach it. I would look at the range of different people and situations that we're thinking that this might best kind of work in, and then kind of go from there.
Okay, so it's finding the hassles that people have, and so you're kind of open in terms of how to approach it. And it could be like just a page, it could be introductory video, so there's like different solutions around this, and then looking for what the problems are that people might have when they come to the landing page. So the one problem I'm having is I see with the dynamic facilitation process, it's kind of like stepping back to the design process itself. We have kind of, we're designing as well as we're designing for people, so there's kind of like a process that we're doing. And so I see the potential of the dynamic facilitation in terms of you know, taking notes. The idea is that we take notes as we're going along, so that everything everyone says is turned into a coherent, you know, standalone sentence, but that it gets organized too at the same time. So I find I'm kind of taking notes, but there doesn't seem to be time to organize the material. So I feel a little kind of frustration around I guess the process itself of the designing, you know, like what we're doing. So I don't know. Anyway, that's just something that's coming up for me.
You're saying that you're feeling a little frustrated around the need to capture what we're talking about right now as we go along.
Yeah, and to be effective, I guess, for effectiveness, I'm kind of looking at effectiveness, and I see within the dynamic facilitation that it almost like sharing, if what we're saying gets captured as well as gets kind of categorized, by problems or the solutions or how might we, or they have some other categories of just data, just kind of ideas, that actually the whole design, it's almost like we design the brief. It almost like designs the brief itself, that when we're done, we have like a clear brief of what we're going to do, in a sense. And so, because I know that within this brainstorming mode that you're doing, the next phase is that we actually create a brief for where we're going. And it seems like the dynamic facilitation would almost create a brief at the end of it, almost by kind of default. So that really addresses a need for kind of effectiveness for me.
Well, yeah, it can do. Is my microphone on?
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to not. It doesn't bother me. The process that we go through. If you're looking to integrate that within the HCD process, I'm not sure if that's what.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying you'd like to do?
It is. It's like I'm kind of thinking about how to be more effective, and if dynamic facilitation would kind of help it in like the discovery phase of the human-centered design process.
Well, yeah. I mean, it can do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure I understand that. If that was the goal for what we're doing now?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of looking at the process that we're using. The goal is to come up with, it kind of affects the goal, because I'm kind of looking at how we're looking at getting a clear understanding of what it is that we want to do, what we want to focus on. And this, I was thinking that the dynamic facilitation would help with that process, maybe speed it up or make it more efficient. Or
well, we're talking about two different things. We're talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, that again, that's another important thing to establish up front, so that everyone is clear that that's the goal of what we're kind of doing here together today. I wasn't aware of that, so but if that's what you would like to do, that's cool.
Well, it wasn't the goal per se. It's just something that's kind of came up for me. So I don't want to. I mean, the real goal is for us to get a sense of clarity about the direction that we're going. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I said earlier, the dynamic facilitation thing is a process of gathering people's input and reflecting back, making sure that they feel that they're included in the process of chipping in ideas. So again, as a designer, I don't. It's a formalizing of the way that I personally work anyway, and the way that we're trained to kind of work, particularly in the brainstorming stage. What it reminds me of is the war room concept, where you when you're starting on a project and you've got a room that's dedicated, just a dedicated space for everybody to put up their ideas and perspectives on the walls. It's a room for kind of, blue sky sort of strategic thinking, but also tactical stuff. So you've got points of view from everybody that's working on it, from the project managers, product designers, people making the pizza. Everyone puts their puts ideas up, and you have basically a whole bunch of stuff there, and it goes back to the the basic kind of way that design works in terms of going wide at the beginning and funneling down and getting kind of focused on stuff. But my understanding of what we're trying to do, rather than introduce another process, is just to get clear on what we wanted to make our challenge to explore through the formal the HCD process as it is. That's my understanding of what the goal was. Anyway.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. So I like the challenge of creating a landing page and looking at that aspect, starting from there.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it sounds from what I'm hearing from the rest of you guys that it feels that we've got. We're getting a kind of a shared feeling that it's important to get that clarity up front before getting into the tool itself. So my kind of sense is that that's moving us towards what the real kind of challenge is how do we introduce or how might we introduce newcomers to the empathy circle. That might actually be the challenge. And if that's the case, what are where do we think the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities are around that statement? And that might lead us down a bunch of different roads. It might be, well, we need to come up with a really clear, concise introduction to the idea of the empathy circle and why you should care, and what ideas do we need to come up with as ways of expressing that. And it might take the form of a landing page. It might be a video script. Could be a whole bunch of different things. But the point is that that's the starting point for the challenge. And if we've got that as a challenge, we can then say, okay, well, what goals do we think we would like to achieve by going through a project that addresses that? Does that mean that we want to find some people that are really kind of anti-empathy and turn them around and help them understand that this is something that's worth kind of engaging with? If we were able to do that, that would be that could become a way of measuring whether it works or not. Do you see what I mean? So it's a way of helping not just say what the project is, but giving us something that we can look at and then say, well, okay, if that's the challenge, what would the success of it look like? Would that be, tons of new people signing up to do empathy circles with Edwin? Would that be a way of taking the tool and allowing others to become Edwins in facilitators of empathy circles? It could, it's going to spread off from that, and it just gives us a way of coming up with ideas of positive results that we might be able to work towards because by imagining what those end results might be, oftentimes, excuse me, in terms of design, you can kind of work backwards from it and be, well, if what we want to do is get tons of people to sign up and then sort of spread the word, that's gonna change the way that that ideas come up for the project as you go through it, because you've got a sense of not only what it is that you're trying to work on, but where you want to shift the needle at the end of it. I'm doing a lot of talking. I'm going to turn my microphone to mute.
I think that what you're saying about having sort of a clear idea of what our goals and what the outcomes that we're looking for is a really good way for us to try to facilitate ideas. But also I was thinking it might be good for newcomers to sort of see that themselves as well, sort of a potential goal that they might have, or like an idea of how they could progress themselves, sort of some sort of manifestation of like improvement or something like that. I think would be another way of motivating people to try to take this on and see this maybe more as a challenge. Might engage more people, just as an idea of how we might introduce it to people. I think you're right about how it needs to be simple, the introduction, and the introduction is the hard part, to get people actually interested, but still keeping it simple and it's not overwhelming people, but still making it clear what it is. So maybe if it was more of a step-by-step thing where you have a really basic introduction, and then if people are interested in it, then they'll do the next step where you talk to someone and they'll give you a little bit more in-depth explanation, or you do you learn like one skill or something, and eventually maybe it'll build you up to the stage where you could then engage in the empathy circle. And then I think that might be a little more effective in how that empathy circle then gets generated and the conversations that come through that, because then people will have a better idea of maybe what's going on and how to contribute to that. Yeah, just reflecting on some of your previous thoughts.
So I was hearing there is about kind of the motivation, like for newcomers, like a way of motivating them or finding their motivation. Is that one part? Like, what's the motivation that they have and how to support that? It's something, yeah.
Right. So giving them a sort of sense of purpose of actually taking this on, like why would they want to? How is it going to benefit them personally, and how is it related to themselves, I guess, and where can they get by engaging in this?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that that personal understanding and being able to get something like really quickly, especially in the age that we live in now. People's attention spans are like kind of zip, and so you need to be able to kind of explain a concept, and for people to get it, like bang, you just need to needs to be on the case. So to me, the more effective and the clearer the benefit is communicated to people, particularly to those who likely might get the most from it, who may be the kind of challenging ones. it's even more important to kind of explain it in a way where you can see its personal relevance and its value in you spending that time. Because you know, the other thing that I think is really interesting about it is this something that I want to commit my time to in, you know, in an age where we've all got a billion other kind of things going on, and what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, we're giving we're committing time and self-care in this process, and that's maybe something that would be an interesting thing to kind of put in, is, you know, just by spending an hour kind of doing this is a useful thing, because you're committing time to self-development and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might not kind of get that, other people maybe would, but what I'm saying is that, reflecting on what you were saying about the introduction aspect of it, there are all kinds of interesting things and ways to kind of articulate it. But the point is that, as with designing anything really well, I kind of view it as an editing process where you're kind of chopping away, you're cutting away at everything that isn't kind of relevant to get up to the focus on the core idea, and then making the core idea itself as great as you know, really crafting what remains, so that you don't have any kind of extraneous sort of nonsense left to get in the way. And that's for me what design is all about. That's true empathy, because you're thinking, what is it that you really care about in this thing that I'm presenting to you, or that I'm asking you to engage with, because I'm being respectful of what you care about, and your time and your decisions and choices. You don't have to kind of look at this, but I'm going to do what I can to craft it in a way that thinks about you and what's important to you and how it might be useful to you. So that setting the introduction thing up is huge. It's almost like, well, it's how it's how brands present themselves, right?
Yeah, it's like, it's the value proposition, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess honing in on how to phrase that and pitch that as an actual value to someone is the hard part. And forming that idea into a clear, concise understanding is the challenge, I think.
Yeah, and that's in my process. In part 2, in the definition, the goals and scope, right at the end, there's something around the resourcing, where you're talking about there how you speak about that, and the value proposition comes to making sure that, you know, if you need to communicate in a specific way, you need to think about, like, who is going to be the most appropriate to work with to do that. You know, is it something that I'm going to be able to do myself and do it like down at the beach on my iPhone, or do I need to kind of hire like a killer, you know, a headline writing creative director, writer level person to do that for me, which is going to make all the difference. You see what I mean? So it brings into it just raises a lot of interesting points around what it is that you're doing, why, and who are the best people to kind of do that.
Right.
So Edwin, do you want to would you like for us to inch our way towards actually defining what we think the challenge is? I think I've got a feeling that we're well, I feel it's pretty clear to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Do you want to?
Do you want to phrase it or write it, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think from just what we've been hearing, we have a pretty clear understanding of what we want to work on now. So I guess the question next is, like, how do we want to structure our, like, following meetings or stuff? Like, I just tend to have, like, a clear, like, schedule or, like, structure so that we have clear expectations for the next hour, like what we're working on, and then for, I guess, next meeting or the next 2 meetings, what we're working on. So I don't know. So for the next hour, are we going to just dive into this problem, like challenge and follow Tim's framework to try to come up with a brief or something? Is that like what we're trying to do in the next hour?
I can tell you how I normally do this stuff, but this isn't how I normally do it. So the way that this discovery process goes is getting that contextual information together. I have discussions with people about it and do my research and my figuring out points of views. I collate all of that, and then I kind of get that together and start to summarize it into something that's kind of understandable, and then share the results of that with the people that I'm working with. So if you all were a client or a bunch of people from a company that I was doing something with, I would go through the summary of the context information just to make sure that everybody was kind of on the same page. And then the next thing I would do is start to look in terms of the goals and the scope in the second stage, the definition. I would start to actually map out and look at whether any of these other tools are necessary. I don't always use these things, but they're ways that I start to frame the information that's going to go into a brief. But I don't. What I'm saying is that we have a discussion. We talk about these points of view. Then I go away and actually create something that can be shared back and reflected on. And then we have another discussion. And then I go away and do that. So it isn't something like well, what do you think the challenge statement is, Sophie? And what do you think the challenge statement is, Edwin? It isn't it doesn't kind of happen on the fly like that. It needs for us to come for me to summarize or condense the discussion, and then come back and say for example, I might come back and say, well, what I think we heard was that the challenge is, what was it now? I'm trying to remember. How do we introduce people most effectively to the empathy circle tool? And is that make sure that everybody is on board with that as being the challenge? Usually it is by then, because it's been something that we've all chipped in on. And then we can start looking at putting some scope around that as a challenge in its own right. So we might use the philosophy tool, by asking, why are we trying to solve this? We might spend an hour doing the 5 whys and come up with some points of view around that. We might look at spending some time on the timescale tool and looking at future-based stuff versus intermediate solutions. So what we're doing is starting to move towards just taking all of the points of view and putting them into like just a one-pager. Briefs are really, really hard to do well, but all the really good ones are absolutely brain dead simple. And getting them onto one page where the stuff is kind of summarized, that people don't have to think or work to kind of understand. To me, that's the goal of a brief, and it becomes super valuable because it's a place where you've got everybody basically on the same page. No matter who's kind of working on it, everyone is looking at something that they get, they understand it conceptually, they understand what the goals are for the thing, and most importantly, they can see how they have got a vested interest in it as well. So it isn't something outside of this that is done on the fly, because it's a time-consuming and difficult activity to take that and compress it. We could probably do a foreshortened version of it. We can definitely kind of discuss the point, but it will it still requires to get to that point 3, the brief itself at the end, which is just a summary of all of the points. We're kind of doing it now.
Are you suggesting, so from what I'm hearing, it definitely is not something that we can come up with on the fly or in the next hour. So I wonder if it makes sense that we can start a shared Google Doc, and then we maybe use the next hour to lay out the framework of the questions that we want to answer, and then we just each put our thoughts into it. And then next time we come back, and then we can discuss this. So for the next hour, maybe we can lay a framework, something like that.
Yeah. So that's a great idea. So it might be a matter of us individually going away or spending time thinking about what we've just had the discussion around. If you want to look through the things that I put in terms of the way that I work with the definition, the goals, and the scope, that might raise ideas or points of view that you would like to kind of discuss. But the point is that there are our individual learnings from what we've been discussing or points of view. We need to take those and collate them. And so a Google Doc would be a great place for that stuff to end up. It goes back to what Edwin was talking about earlier in terms of the buckets, the buckets of the points of view. There might be a bunch of things that we individually kind of think about around philosophical points of view. There may be a bunch of common ideas or themes that come up from our reflection on what we've been talking about that end up going into the brief. So, yeah, it's. I'm sorry, there's someone. I need to go let someone in. Can you? I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, well, we do have the Google Doc that we've been working on. It's been fitting all kinds of stuff here in this Google Doc. Yeah, I'm wondering how to integrate this with the rest of the course now, because the course is, we're in the research phase of the course, so that's class 2. And within the IDEO course that we had our design challenge of improving the empathy circle, which, you know, sounds like the narrower focus is how might we introduce newcomers most effectively to the empathy circle tool. And we were kind of in this couple of weeks, we're doing research around maybe with that challenge, you know, trying, you know, doing tests or trying it, seeing what people's experiences are, especially with people who are you know, new to empathy circles or empathic listening. And then the next step after this is the synthesis, and I just did that in the group, team 6. We went through the kind of the synthesis process where we were kind of like honing down all of our insights. We took interviews. We had done a bunch of interviews. We took the interviews apart into kind of component pieces and put them onto a brainstorming page, Stormboard. And usually, you know, that's done, you know, on a wall, like Tim was saying, we have all the post-its. Then we started creating themes, and then we took those themes and found insights within each of those themes. And then we created how might we statements. So we came up with a list of how might we statements. And then the next week after that, we would go into the brainstorming on one of those how might we statements. And then after that, come up with, you know, the following week after that is creating a prototype and then testing the prototype. So that's kind of the design course. And so we've got kind of what Tim's doing here. So I'm just kind of looking at how do we kind of, you know, merge those, or how everybody is around, you know, the course and what we're doing here too.
Yeah, so just to get a better understanding of what this course is about, would you mind sort of explaining what a couple of the things that you've been doing in the previous meeting, Hangouts? Did you guys initially sort of go through those empathic skills together and then practice those and see how, like, experienced it, or?
Yeah, well, the course, the design course, is broken into 5 parts, which they do in 7 weeks. So the first meeting is we just got people get together and then they do a mini design. Like within, you know, one meeting we did. You go through a full iteration of the design, the empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. The example that they gave in the course was redesign the commute of each other, and we changed that to redesign. We did an empathy circle for an hour, and then we spent 2 hours redesigning it, going through the whole process, like in in 2 hours. And we actually did that 3 times. So the first 3 meetings were we extended the course and did 3 iterations of the redesign, just to kind of go through the full process.
Yeah.
This group was the other groups did that. This group, we did 1 iteration, and then we spending a lot of time kind of doing this more discussion. So so that's like the first lesson. The second one is preparing for research. So you have your design challenge, and then you spend 2 weeks. You kind of prepare a list of questions, who are going to interview, and then we actually go out and do do the interviews. And so we're kind of in that phase right now, kind of the research. And in the research, we've kind of stepped back a bit to kind of bring in these insights from Tim. So then we've got the insights from Tim plus the course. And I'm just wondering, how do we kind of merge all this together?
So the people you're researching, are they people who've never done empathy circles before, or are you just talking to anyone who might be interested in practicing empathy? Yeah,
it was. Well, in our first group, there's 3 teams. This is Team 7. Team 6. The design challenge for Team 6 became, how might we make empathy circles fun for high school students, because there's 2 high school students involved and a couple of teachers, so they're very interested in empathy circles. How do we bring it into the schools? So we were interviewing teachers, the students were interviewing fellow students. Okay. They also did some test empathy circles with their fellow students. And so there's a research page, so everybody's supposed to write up their research. So if you go on the website, there's like individual interviews they did. So every team is kind of going a little bit different direction. And I'm not sure, this group, we're kind of like doing more of this deeper exploration of the discovery with Tim, I think. So it's kind of, the group is a little bit different. We haven't followed the strict steps of the course and how we kind of set it up. So, yeah. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I
think so. Yeah. I guess I was just curious too as to some of the some of the things that go into an empathy circle, since I haven't technically experienced that myself.
Oh, you had signed up for the one on the 6th, is that right? Or maybe not.
I think I confused it with this, where I thought this was sort of where you would practice it and then we would iterate it onto that.
Yeah. Well, what there's is like there's a mini design, like a 3-hour standalone course. So I've been doing those, and that's like the 1 hour of empathic listening, and then 2 hours of redesigning it, and people can come just for those 3 hours. And then that's like standalone, by itself, so you can kind of get the experience and the taste of it. With the longer group, we've actually done 3 of those iterations, together as a team, and then we're going to go into the course. And so that was kind of how it was kind of structured.
Okay. And this is the longer one, right?
This is the longer one, yeah. So you're welcome to kind of, if that one might be full on the 6th, but then there's the 17th. Or actually tomorrow in the group, I think we're going to do design too. So you can actually join that group too if you're wanting to. It's at 9 o'clock.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
That's good.
So I was just explaining to him, kind of the overall course, and then also how do we kind of merge, the course and kind of this part with the discovery. What do we? I don't know. I guess what do we do next?
Well, I think that the important thing at this point is that we're discussing the stuff rather than working on individually, like on the Google Doc. So what might be worth doing is for us to just it sounds as though we've got well, the first thing is the context stuff. So it sounds like we as a team are starting to get a bit of a better understanding just around the background aspect of it. And what we've been talking about this morning is that we think that there are some challenges around, like, introducing the whole idea of what it is and why people should care about it. Is everyone agreeing with that? Yeah. And so two thumbs. So what we could go through now is some of these things that I put up in terms of the tools that I use to tackle this. Is do we want to spend any time, or do we have any kind of ideas or points of view to talk about with some of these things? And then maybe what we can try to get to is to come up with a brief that we can talk about at the next meeting that reflects on the stuff that we've been through today. I mean, just to be clear, what I've put, what you were looking at on the Google Docs thing here in terms of my process is just it isn't a rigid thing. These are just some examples of the types of information that I need to start working on a project. I need to get to a point where I've got some kind of clear pointers in terms of what it is that I'm trying to do. But the tools and the pieces of information always kind of change. It always varies from project to project. So this isn't a rigid sort of framework for me, kind of by any means. But they're tools that I use mainly for discussion, to kind of try to tease out of the stakeholders in a project what it is that they've got kind of going on in their minds, because almost always we all have kind of different points of view on these things, and the objective with this is to get out of everyone's heads and onto a piece of paper or a document some way of being objective about what we're all agreeing it is that we're trying to do. So we could talk, we could have a chat around what we think the goals and the scope of it should be, and I think that will help us move towards creating a formal document that is a summary of all of our points of view. And I can imagine the way that might work is we do some discussion now outside of the Google Hangout. We just quickly write up some notes individually of what kind of came to the top of our mind in terms of what we've discussed today, and then next week together we can go through and collate them and get them all into one place, so we've got the brief essentially. Does that make sense? That's one way of approaching it anyway.
Okay. So we could have a discussion about the context, as well as we all write up notes about what came up for us in this meeting, and we discuss that again.
Yeah, well, we've For example, we might. Here's what I imagine writing at the end of this discussion for me personally. That I found what Edwin spoke about earlier. He talked about the whole empathy circle and the Carl Rogers thing and the reflective practice and the difference between that and the deeper kind of ones like NVC that are difficult and time consuming to learn. That for me was useful information. It helped me understand what it is that we're kind of dealing with, although I can't I'm having difficulty now actually relaying what that was, but that's why this is for me so important. I need a really clear way of understanding what this thing is. That's my point of view around one of my point of views around the context. The other one for me that I would write notes about are that that there are that communication aspect of this as a subject is a challenge. The next challenge is how do we present that in a way, or what do we need to think about in terms of helping win people into this idea of what it is that we're doing. So where are the weaknesses and the and the opportunities in terms of addressing this? And again, I'm not talking about finding the solution at this stage. I'm just saying this is something that I noticed in our discussion today, and this is what I'm starting to understand about the subject. And then I would add under the definition stuff any ideas that occurred to me that were interesting or worth sort of raising. And again, not necessarily specific answers, but things that I think are important to include in the brief, and they might be issues, philosophical issues, or they might be specific tasks. So just literally like kind of bullet point level or post-it notes, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be. It needs to be quick and concise, just points of view. And then, like I said, what happens? What would happen next week is that we would be able to see patterns in those points of view and make sure that we're getting input from everybody, things that we individually might think that are something really important to consider. Edwin might come up with something around, a time scale thing that we hadn't kind of thought of or discussed in the meeting, but it's helpful to go in to consider. So that's the way that I would tackle it. But again, this type of work and the discovery stuff is important, and of course this is an unusual kind of format for doing it. Is normally we do it as a team of people, like doing it kind of in person. And some of these things are done in real time together. Sometimes we're doing work going off, looking at things individually. It's just R&D basically, and gathering information and getting points of view, and most importantly, inspiration. that's probably the biggest one of the biggest things that comes out of the discovery process is that oftentimes there'll be a doodle or a sketch or an idea, and it's like, oh yeah, that's that's a really killer idea that just came out of the discussion, the early thinking. Am I making sense?
Yeah, for me it was what's really coming up is the importance of just the empathic listening as the core, and the kind of the benefits of that and the motivation that people have, for doing it and making that component really easy. And
yeah, I mean, it's an important thing to do because we're all coming at this for different reasons and with different interests, and so having everybody kind of chip in and be heard and express it individually our ideas is an important thing, especially in a commercial sort of situation, because for me, an example might be that I'm working with a business person as the main kind of point of contact, but the technologist or the technology team still will need to have an input and be felt, have a sense of engagement. And so what I'm saying is you've got all of these different points of view and different disciplines working on something. It works much better when you've given people an opportunity to express their ideas and their opinions about where they feel they can make a difference.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, like in the group here, that you really want everyone to be able to share their opinions and their ideas around this project, and just really giving everyone a chance to kind of surface what's coming up for them, and then share that, and then kind of there's a convergence that happens. I noticed that there's kind of this divergent, all these ideas come up, and you just keep talking, and it kind of, the ideas kind of converge to some place, and then we open it up to another divergence. There's this convergence and divergence of ideas. We want to have a space that this discovery is creating a space for this convergence and divergence of ideas, and it's really about us all getting, hearing everything everyone has that's coming up, so we can have a clear sense of shared direction. And all the factors are brought in that could affect the process.
Yeah, the main thing about it is that it's a translation process. You're taking all of these different languages and points of view and trying to kind of form them into a single kind of agreed statement about what it, or an understanding of what it is that we're trying to do. So we're taking, in the business world, we're combining the points of view from the different languages of marketing, the business people, the technologists. All of those are different languages and have different ways of viewing, measuring success or what the project is even about. So
yes, that's kind of like the divergent component, kind of the opening divergent. And it seems that we did come to a convergent point, which is how might we introduce newcomers most effectively to the empathy circle tool? Is that kind of a sense? We do have that kind of a convergent, and then we're going into the next phase of diverging again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, what's the gateway to the divergence? Is it just like, well, we have that, now what do we do? Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So so if that is the challenge, if we go
And
into
how do we determine if that's the challenge? Just everybody vote, everybody agrees. I mean, you know what I mean? How do you test if everybody's on board? Just, I mean, I'm on board, so with that
yeah,
challenge.
I am. I'll vote for that.
That's three. We're all on board. Okay.
Okay, so that is the challenge statement.
Yeah.
So what I would do now is go, okay, that if that indeed is the challenge, what opinions do we individually have around or ideas we want to talk about? It would just a discussion around starting to kind of define that. So and again, with some of these tools, these are just sort of starting points that I use to to think about raising questions around that challenge statement.
So as we're going into divergence around that, and just to kind of stimulate discussion and divergent opening up, you would start with like some of those areas, like what's the context here, maybe, or.
Well, we've started to get the idea around the context. Outside of this, in the design world, we would get to that challenge statement. Now, as individually, we would go away and be thinking about, well, you know, what are my ideas around, or points of view around addressing that, and then come back. So it's a constant, like, going kind of backwards and forwards. It's different now because we're kind of trying to do it in real time, which is.
So you're thinking it's better that we just on our own kind of just write down a bunch of ideas about what comes up for us around that challenge.
In a normal,
Mm-hmm.
I say normal, in a regular design situation, yes, that's the way that it would be done. But what I find here is when we do that, for me, it doesn't make the most of the fact that we're together. It makes me feel that there's more value to us spending the time having a discussion while we're together, and then creating notes about it. I'm not saying
we've got 25 minutes. I mean, that works for me. If we just kind of brainstorm, like, what comes up for everybody around this, and we just go around and share that and write it out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think maybe, yeah, if we just talk, we have a conversation around the definition stuff, and we can refer to some of these tools for ideas or points of view around what we think.
The tools were definitions, context. What were they?
Say again?
What was the tool titles?
They're on page 2. There's the challenge statement, which we think we've got. There's the 5 whys. There's the time scale stuff. There's the opportunities, methodologies, specific people.
I like the 5 whys. I'm amazed at how the 5 whys really kind of hones in on like something really deep. For me, the why about why do this design challenge is just care for people. I have a sense of wanting them to feel at ease when they get involved in this. And so that's, and why do I care about that is because I care about my own sense of ease. I want sense of ease too. And I care about the sense of ease because I try to avoid pain and go more for positive feelings. So there's a quote by Carl Rogers. He says, empathy feels, he talks about listening and empathic listening. He says and why? It's like it feels damn good was his kind of core definition. So I think that's, this kind of leads us to me feeling damn good and for other people to feel damn good. So
yeah, so you can see that just that statement, feel damn good, might be an idea that is like, is that a headline that's on the thing that's the first thing that you see when you come to this? Feel damn good. That's like, is that the empathy circle catchphrase, or the way that we introduce people to this as an idea? I mean, it could be, but what I'm saying is, you're arriving at ideas like that as a result of using this way of thinking. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that's, if we each go through a 5 whys, or if people feel inspired, that could kind of elicit, it's like, why do we want to do this? Why do you even care? That you want to do it effectively. So
yeah. And I would throw the question out there. Well, that might be why you want to do it, Edwin.
Yeah.
But what about
Edwin?
And
what about you?
Well, exactly. There's.
What about Maya? And what about Sophie?
Exactly. So those are. That's why this stuff can be kind of really interesting. It's like, well, there's do we all have like shared sort of opinions around like why this is important, or do we have like does it need to be something that is really personal and maybe personalizable?
Well, tell us. Don't keep us waiting.
Well, I would say something that was really interesting to me was that a while back we talked about issues around the recording of it, and how do we want to feel is empathy and empathic listening most useful in a really in a safe and intimate kind of situation that is prevented from being by certain things like this being on YouTube. I don't want to talk about certain things, or I don't necessarily want to share certain things. There are a question that to me is a big kind of philosophical question around this, and around the way that the circles work. Is I would like to know if this is this a situation or a tool or a product that I'm going to get involved with that is around me, helping me talk about stuff that's really important to me, and that being able to get a real sense of usefulness from beyond just just saying stuff. I don't know. Again, I don't have the answer. I'm just saying that's it's kind of a fundamental question that comes up that influences how this whole idea is likely to be presented. Is it a therapy tool, or is it just something that you kind of come to practice, like, you know, and oh, that made me feel a little bit better, but it would be completely different if it was if it was targeted to, say, specific therapeutic kind of situations.
So I didn't quite get that. It's like, if the question is, why is this design challenge relevant to you or important to you, is it's I don't know if it didn't seem like personal to you. Is like, why is it personally relevant to you, I guess?
Well, what I think I think
Is it
what
okay
I'm.
if I interview you a little bit? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What I'm trying to say is that in using the philosophy question, why are we trying to solve this? That that's an important question to ask, because I want to understand why it is that I'm coming to participate in the empathy circle. Why am I here? Am I here just to practice something with people? Am I here for self-development? Am I looking to connect with other people in an empathic situation that is shared between us? For example, the empathy circles might have specific themes for specific groups of people. Let's say people that have been in plane crashes. crazy example, but there might be a support group for people that have like survived being in an air accident. That's what I'm saying is I want to have an understanding not only of like how it works, but why am I here, and
Okay, you like the question. What I'm understanding is because you're wanting understanding, so that understanding is important to you.
Yeah, well, specifically philosophically, what's this all about, and what am I doing here?
So is it kind of like meaning? Is that
Yeah.
meaning is important?
What does this what does participating in this mean?
And why is meaning important to you?
Oh, you're asking me a question.
Yeah, the whys, the 5 whys. Why is meaning and understanding important?
Because I want to feel that if I'm spending time on this, that I'm either learning something or contributing to moving it forward.
And why is learning and contribution and effectiveness important to you, or moving something forward important to you?
Just explain to the girls that you're doing the 5 whys now.
Yeah, I'm doing the 5 whys. I think we're on 2.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Why is learning and contributing to effectiveness important to you?
Well, I'm not even sure I know how to answer that right now. Because I think because I'm driven, I want to make something that makes a difference. That's not just I don't know how to answer it at the moment.
So I'm hearing you don't know quite how to answer it, but that you do have a sense that you're driven and that you want to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's because I need to have I need to have clarity around around the subject in order to do something for it.
And why is clarity important to you?
Because without the clarity, I'm not able to create something with meaning.
Uh-huh. And why is meaning important to you? That's the last why.
Well, why is meaning important? I don't know. What's the meaning of the universe?
Okay,
Can I chime in here?
Yeah.
please.
I wonder if I can ask Tim, why do you want to, or why are you interested in like connecting with others, like using this as a therapeutic tool? Because I think that's something that came up previously. I guess if that can be the final why, like why do you want to use it to apply to, like, I guess the plane crash survivors and that kind of situations as a therapeutic tool?
Because I think it helps. It's helping me understand myself and my own function in interrelationship with other people. Hearing other perspectives. And getting to a shared understanding of things is important for me. I value that, and it's really it's really difficult. I've found, you know, as a designer, I think that what's so frustrating, or can be so frustrating about it, is the amount of guesswork that it takes to try to solve a problem that hasn't been kind of defined up front. When you're working on something where people I don't know what it is that I'm asking you to do, so go away and do me a whole bunch of things. What happens is you pour your heart and soul into 5 or 6 different kind of solutions that are guesses for answering the problem, but you're having to pour this huge amount of emotional and intellectual effort into something that essentially is just guesswork. And so what I find and have found is makes a huge difference is by trying to ascertain what it is that we're trying to do at the beginning, prevents that, or it lessens that subjective aspect of trying to solve strategy by doing.
Yeah, I guess that's like why you need a meaning for this project. But I'm also interested in, because we've met like a couple of times through these meetings, and I think you came up a lot with like wanting to help like people with traumatic experience, and also you mentioned that earlier that you want to help those people and use Empathy Circle as a therapeutic tool. Why
Yeah.
is that?
Why is that?
Yeah.
Because I can see from personal experience that has a big that's really helpful. I know from personal experience that being able to share with other people, that particularly if there are other people that have had not that experience, but maybe one kind of like it, it can be really, really helpful, because a lot of things that people struggle with, they struggle with alone, and this I can see being a valuable way to help people out of that isolation aspect of dealing with difficult stuff. And so it just so happens that I think that particularly in therapeutic kind of situations where people are suffering with stuff that is isolating, that's where I see its value from a personal perspective. Did that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wonder if I'm really curious if we could hear from Sophie and Maya just about like why this theme is important, our design challenge.
I can start. I think for me, I have two personal motivations. First is empathy is important to me because I value harmonious relationships among people, and so I think being empathetic will reduce a lot of frictions between people. If in like personal relationship, like family relationship, if I'm empathetic of what my close family members are thinking, I understand where they're coming from, even though I didn't have the same experience, and then it just helps that there may not be like conflicts, or the conflict would not happen because I understand them. So that's the personal thing. I find that really important. So empathy is very important to like just harmonious interpersonal relationships. And second is I also think empathy is helpful in a professional setting. So for me, this is more like utilitarian purpose. I also want to do better at my job. I think empathy is very important because when you work with other people, if you can be a good listener, you can find out what your colleagues are talking about, what your boss wants, and just what everyone in the room, like everyone in your team, cares about, what they want. So by being a good listener, you understand people better. So you can work better with your colleagues, or you can produce results that people want. And you can, well, if you use it in a bad way, you can even manipulate people if you understand people well. So that's useful or helpful professional skill to be a good listener, you can be more productive at work. So that's two of my personal motivations of trying to be more empathetic.
Yeah. The reason I'm interested in is, well, primarily I came into this research because of my thesis project around care, but I think that emotional well-being is something really important, especially now, because I think there are a lot of people who we're working so much now, and stress is sort of something that seems to be a given, and I think stress has become more prevalent now, and just knowing or learning how to deal with taking care of our emotional well-being, I think, is extremely important, and looking into how those states of mind, such as like depression or being stressed or having anxiety, is very self-focused, and how we could tackle that through empathetic relationships, where that's sort of a mutual way of emotional well-being, where you're contributing, but at the same time you're also self-caring because you're contributing, and just looking at that as a sort of therapeutic tool, basically, as you guys were saying it, and I just think that it's something that everyone should learn how to practice, seeing as it's sort of so beneficial to all of us as an individual and as a society. So that's kind of really what drew me into empathy as sort of a therapeutic tool, I guess.
Okay. If we did the 5 whys, we would really dig into those. It's just that we're kind of at 1 o'clock, so we might want to plan for the next meeting. Do we want to do more writing, like a context, our own individual ideas that come up, and then share those again, like next week, or how would everyone like to proceed?
I think that would be a good way of tackling it. Just to kind of bullet point summarize some of the things that came up today. Do you want to do that now, or do it individually?
I think it's better we just do it, I guess, individually. We can follow the framework you suggested, like context and then challenge, like philosophy. We can probably keep adding on our whys, and then like task, or what does success look like. We can all just each write up our own version of this framework, and then we can like share them next meeting.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, works for me.
Cool.
So, Maya, would you like to join us, or how? I'm just curious if you want to join us next week, or.
I would, but I actually have work in the morning, and I got off early just to sort of check this out. So I don't.
Okay.
I don't know if I would be able to do it weekly, but if I'm allowed to just jump in any points, I would love to. But if that's sort of a disruptive thing, then that's okay as well. But
works for me. I don't know how it works for everyone else.
Yeah, fine by me.
Some of our members are kind of jumping in and out, like Lulu's not here, and Mercedes, so they're kind of, and Sophie wasn't here last time, so it is a little bit of jumping in and out. So I guess that works. And you're also welcome to do like the mini design too, or like tomorrow I think we're going to do the mini design in the group. And
that's where you do empathic listening?
Yeah, we would do an hour of empathic listening, then we just redesign the circle experience. So that's Another option. So okay, then we do these reports, come back and talk next week and go through them again. And Sophie, we'd also talked about even extending the course like a week or so that we can incorporate this and still do our regular course material too later. So I don't know how you are with that, if that works.
You mean extending another week to be like 11 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I may need to be absent for 2 weeks because my parents are visiting.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh, you can do an empathy. That can be your homework. You can do an empathy circle with them.
If
and
we can come up with a brief before that, I'll use it on them. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me know. I can help too with there is the instructions on how to do the empathic listening empathy circle. So
okay, yeah.
That's there. You can even redesign the instructions too.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a landing page of its own.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, well, very good.